Hi everyone, how are you? Welcome again to these wonderful sessions that we are having. So I hope that you've been blessed by our teaching on heaven. And so I want to take a break just a little bit and just even as you listen and learn about heaven, I also want to look at the Bible. And so I hope that today, even as you look at the Bible, you will stay with me. Now, if you want to listen to the audios, go to KN George Podcast. You can actually Google KN George Podcast. It's available everywhere on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify, on Anchor, anywhere that podcasts are available. Just Google KN George Podcast. All right, now let's begin another journey, a wonderful journey. And I hope that even as we start this journey, it's just a conversation that we are having as we look at the Bible, as we look at the things that God has done in our lives. And so, as I said, as I was starting off, I hope you've been enjoying our teaching on heaven. And because it is very important to understand the concept of heaven and how heaven impacts your life, okay? How heaven is like, and because that is a destination that we are headed towards. So I pray that you're doing well. Now, today I want us to start on Genesis, the book of Genesis. I know it's a big book. It's a wide book, and I'll do my best to do what I can with the time that I have. Now, I remember when I was in Bible school and we were doing this, I had to, at some point in my schooling, I had trouble with finances. And so I had to do self-study, meaning that I had to kick out the teachers and not just do a class, but study by myself. It was cheaper, it was more affordable, but still we couldn't afford the money. So I had to do a lot of things to be able to raise the fee that I needed at that time. And one of the most interesting topics, or one of the most interesting courses that I had to take was the book of Genesis. Amazing book, like just an amazing book. And so today, I want us to look at several things from the book of Genesis and how it impacts our lives. So what we will do, we'll just go the traditional way. We start with Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2, and then we see how each builds towards the next, okay? Even as you look at the omniscience of God, the power of God, the wonderful things that God has done, His majesty and His power, because it is all revealed in the book of Genesis, okay? So let's begin. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, I'm going to read from the Amplified Classic Version. So there will be some additional things that Amplify uses. In the beginning, God prepared, formed, fashioned, and created the heavens and the earth. So what you have to understand about Amplified is that they are, they go deeper or they expand it. That's why it's called the Amplified. So it amplifies, giving more meaning to some of these things. So other versions read, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But the Amplified goes and talks about prepared, formed, or fashioned. So these are different words that basically talk about the same thing. The Lord prepared, the Lord formed, and the Lord fashioned the heavens and the earth. This is how Genesis begins. And for those of you like me who believe in the creation story, this or creation theory, this is a very interesting concept because verse 2 says, the earth was without form, okay, and an empty waste, and darkness was upon the face of the very great deep. The Spirit of God was moving or hovering, brooding over the face of the waters. Now let's pause there. Verse 1 is very clear. In the beginning, which beginning? The beginning of the earth, the beginning of time, the beginning of everything. Now, there is a concept that is called the gap theory. I don't know whether it exists or whether it's real, but let me just mention it so that for the sake of the study that we are doing. The gap theory says that there is a gap between Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and verse 2. Okay? And that's why, so the reason they say that is because Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 begins with, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's almost like a final thing. It's almost like done. He created it, heavens and the earth. That's it. Boom, done, created. Then verse 2 comes and says, the earth was formless and void. So it is almost as if there is a contradiction between verse 1 and verse 2, according to gap theorists. And they say that in verse 1, God created the heavens. But then in verse 2, we find another earth that is formless and void. And the theorists between verse 1 and 2 say that it is between this time that dinosaurs existed, that there was 80 million years ago, all these things. And so I don't know about it, but what I know is that God created the heavens and the earth. And I also know that in verse 2, the earth was without form and void. And my version says, an empty waste, and darkness was upon the face of the very great. The Spirit of God was moving. Now, the other question that we have to ask ourselves is, the Spirit of God was existing. There was also darkness that was existing, and there was also water that was existing. This is before the creation, okay? So darkness was existing and the water was existing. Now, does that mean that these things were not created? No. It simply shows that maybe the earth existed before the beginning, okay? That is according to gap theorists, all right? So the earth was without form and an empty waste. So there's no form, there's no plant, there's nothing. It's simply empty, all right? And darkness was upon the face of the great deep. The Spirit of God was moving. And then verse 3 says, and God said, let there be light. And there was light. Now, we'll get back here. And God said, let there be light. So, in other words, when the Lord speaks, things happen. And verse 4, God saw that the light was good, suitable and pleasant, and he approved it, and God separated the light from darkness. All right, now stay with me. Verse 5, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and there was evening, and there was morning one day. So the first day that God created, the first thing that God created on the first day was light. And I agree with him, because it will be very difficult to operate without light, And so then verse 6 says, and God said, let there be a firmament, the expanse of the sky in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters below from the waters above. Okay, meaning the earth, the entire earth was covered with water, as we have seen in the few verses before. Verse 7, and God made the firmament, the expanse, and separated the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so. Powerful. Verse 8, and God called the firmament heavens, and there was evening and there was morning, a second day. All right, so the first day we have this light, the second day we have the firmaments being separated. In verse 9, and God said, let the waters under the heavens be collected into one place of standing, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. So what we are seeing here is that God is calling things. God is speaking things. God is announcing things. God is declaring things. And when he does this, things begin to happen. Let there be light. Boom, there is light. Let the water separate. Boom, the water separate. Let the dry land appear. Boom, and the dry land appears. And you see that the interesting thing is that you and I have been given the power to speak and to call things, to declare things into existence. Okay? You and I, because we are created in the image of God, we have been given the creative abilities by God using our own tongue to speak things into existence. And that is why I am usually very careful of the things I say, because there is a possibility that if I say it, it may come to pass, or I may speak it into existence. Okay? So be careful if you're a believer in Jesus Christ and you believe and you are working and the Spirit of God is breathing in you and living in you, be careful about the things you say, because you may speak things that are not good and you bring them into existence. And this is the idea, this is the structure that God has set for us or is showing us. And so, verse 10, God called the dry land earth, and the accumulated waters he called seas. And God saw that this was good, fitting, admirable, and he approved it. Okay, so by his word, he is doing these things. By his word, he is creating the earth. He is giving earth form. He is giving earth shape. He is giving earth life, okay, by his word. So he's speaking and things are happening. And I want to encourage you today that by the same power that God has given you and I, speak into your world. If you're living in a world that is not orderly, and when I say world, I'm talking about your own life. I'm talking about your circumstances, your situations, your environment, the places you're at. Speak order into them. Speak order into your marriage. Speak order into your life. Speak order into your finances. Give form into your affairs, into whatever it is that you do. Speak order to documents that are lost or to situations that are confusing. Okay, speak order, because the enemy comes to give us or to bring to us confusion. And in the midst of chaos, he thrives. And his desire is for you and I to keep living in confusion, to keep living in times when we do not know or understand what we are meant to do. And I remember some time back in my life when I was very focused, and then the devil threw in a lot of confusion, and I became so confused about what I was supposed to do. I even got to a point I doubted myself, and I had, and one of the greatest things, one of the biggest enemies that you will ever have is self-doubt. And so I got to a point and I had a lot of self-doubt about my life, about my call, about my destiny, about my purpose, about my own existence. And so, and I remember that time when the Spirit of God spoke to me and he said to me, speak order into your life. Speak order, create form to what is formless, give shape to what is shapeless. And so I said, all right. And so I started speaking order into my life. And I started speaking form and shape into my life. And within a few months, God had already, everything had already moved to the things, to how it was supposed to be. And my life began to operate the way it was supposed to operate, not because I'm powerful, but because God is powerful through me. So remember, never doubt that. You have kids who are going astray, speak order. You have a marriage that is almost going down, speak order into your life, into your heart, into your spirit, and into your marriage. And God said, verse 11, let the earth put forth vegetation, plants, yielding seed, and fruit trees, yielding fruit, whose seed is in itself, each according to its kind, upon the earth, and it was so. Now, this other thing, verse 12, the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which was their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, suitable, admirable, and He approved it. In other words, everything that God created, He created once. He will never repeat it. Because when He created it, He gave it the ability to also create. Okay? And it's the same concept that we see today, that God has created even us as human beings, and He has put the seed in us so that we can continue in the creation process. The seed of everything is in that thing. The seed of a mango tree is in the mangoes. The seed of a maize is in the maize. So there is always that creativity, that creation that keeps going on and on and on and on. And this is the idea that God had. So this is an affirmation that whatever it is that you want to create, you already have it. It's already inside of you. And you are able to create it. You can speak it and it will come to pass. All right. And verse 13, and there was evening and there was morning, and that is the third day. And then this is interesting because the fourth day, look at what God does. And God said, let there be light in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be signs and tokens of God's provident care, and to mark seasons, days, and years. Now, God creates this on the fourth day. And verse 15, and let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And verse 16, and God made the two great lights, the greater light the sun to rule the day, and the lesser light the moon to rule the night. He also made the stars, and God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, fitting, pleasant, and He approved it. And there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. So the light, the sun and the moon were created on the fourth day. But remember, on the first day, God said what? Let there be light. So the question is this: what light was God operating with from day one? If He created the stars and not the stars, but the sun and the moon on the fourth day, what light was operating on the first day? How did He separate the day and the night in the beginning? How was there day and night before the sun and the moon? Okay, these are questions that you can ask. And then I ask a few people, and the concept or the response usually is God Himself was the light. But then I ask, so if God Himself was a light, it means that there would have been no night. Okay? But from day 1 to day 3, there was evening and there was morning. The light of God does not go dark and light. Okay? It's like when you study heaven and you realize that in heaven, in the book of Revelation 21 and 22, where it describes the New Jerusalem, there will be no night in heaven. There will be no sun and there will be no moon, because the light of God will be our glory. His glory and His presence will be enough to give light to the entire heaven. And so the concept of Genesis 1 is this, that God may have been the light, but then the other question would be, why was there night? Why was there evening? Okay? So this is a question that you can keep discussing and keep searching. I'm just trying to, provoke your mind here and there so that you're able to search and understand. But then the Bible says, verse 20, and God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly and swarm with living creatures, and let birds fly over the earth in the open expanse of the heavens. And 21, God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, suitable, admirable, and he approved it. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful, multiply, fill the waters in the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, a fifth day. So God created all the monsters of the sea. You see, now today, they say that the sea has so much, such that the only ones we have been able to study or to discover is only 15%. An approximation of 15% is the only thing that we've been able to study in the oceans and in the seas, meaning we have not been able to study approximately 80% of sea life, okay? Because there are places in the sea that even cameras cannot get. There are deeper places, deeper oceans, and deeper levels in the seas that even cameras cannot get. And so no one knows what happens in those deep seas. And so only 15% we've been able to study about the monsters. And the good thing, when the more we study this, the more we look at this verse or this chapter, the more we see the greatness of God, the majesty of God, the power of God, because he knows all these things. He knows things that we do not know. He created the monsters that we have never seen. And the other thing that I want to point out here, because we look at it even as we go along, is that during the flood, the time of Noah, the only creatures that were not taken away by the flood were the sea creatures. Okay, they didn't die, but all land animals and people, anything that was on land or air, died. But the only ones that still remained to this day are the sea creatures. They didn't die. Okay, and so maybe that's why the sea has a lot of life that we have not yet studied. Verse 24, and God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creeping things, and wild beasts of the earth according to their kinds. And it was so. Again, he just says, and these things happen. And God made the wild beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and domestic animals according to their kinds, and everything that creeps upon the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, fitting, pleasant, and he approved it. Okay? God said, let us, verse 26, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, make mankind in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have complete authority over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the beasts, and over all of the earth, and over everything that creeps upon the earth. Now, look at this process. So God has said and spoken, let there be, let there be, let there be, let there be the beasts, let there be the sea monsters, let there be the oceans, let there be dry land, let there be light, let there be sun, let there be, let there be, let there be. And then he gets to the man and says, let us make. It's just amazing, It's just amazing that we hold, as human beings, we hold a very important part in the creation. It's like we were the climax of God's creation, the climax of his plan. You are the climax. Let there be, until he gets to man and he says, let us make man in our image. Now, there is a place that I was listening to, even as I researched for this, and I saw there's a guy who was talking about this text, and he said that when God refers to let us make man, he is referring to other gods. And so he's saying that this God is the God of creation, okay? But there is also the God of money. There is a God of peace. There's another God of war. There's another God of this. So what he's doing, he's trying to explain this let us statement by God that he was addressing now him as God creator, he was addressing other gods. And definitely, my friends, that is a false teaching. Okay? God was addressing the Son and the Holy Spirit, which we believe were already existing with him. Okay? And so he says, let us make man or mankind in our own image after our likeness, and let them have complete authority. Now, the other thing is this: do you think that God was talking about image, literal image? Like, do we look like God? Does God have a head like mine, or eyes like mine? And when he talks about image and likeness, is he talking about physical likeness, or is he talking about functional likeness or functional image? Okay. Now, from the text that I've read, I have no reason to believe that God looks like me or that I look like him, because the way God is described is really, honestly, I don't look anything like him. Even how Jesus Christ is described by John the Revelator, he talks about Jesus who has eyes like fire, hair like wool, the legs are like bronze. Okay, so I don't look like him. I may have the functionalities of him, but I don't look like him. I mean, I'm flesh and blood, and my spirit, when I die, will go to him. But I don't look like him, and he doesn't look like me, but I can function like him. And in terms of functionalities, okay, I can speak, I can talk, and I can call forth things just like he teaches me to do. And God blessed them. So God created man in his image. Now, another thing to note is that God gives mankind power, gives mankind authority and dominion. When he talks about the animals, he says, let them multiply. But he doesn't talk to them and grant them any authority. But he talks to man and says, let him multiply, and he gives him authority. So God created man in his own image, in the image and likeness of God. He created him, male and female. He created them. And God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. The same command the animals were given, but God stopped at that point for the animals. Then he continues with man and says, and subdue it, using all its vast resources in the service of God and man, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves upon the earth. Authority. And God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the land, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to all the animals on the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the ground, to everything in which there is the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good, suitable, pleasant, and he approved it completely. And there was evening, and there was morning, a sixth day. Creation story. So the question I have for you is, what lessons do you draw from that? I think some of the lessons is that God has given us dominion. God has created us in his image. God has given us the power to speak things into existence or to speak creatively. God is a creator of the heavens and the earth. He is also the light in which we walk in. And there's hundreds, perhaps hundreds of lessons that we learn from this text. And so my encouragement to you is keep reading the Bible. God bless you. I hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you.